What's up, y'all? One Piece One Life here, and as some of you may know, I'm currently writing my own series, a fan project titled One Piece Grand Journey, which is the sequel to the One Piece story as written by me. Links to all the relevant information will be in the bio, in the description, all that. In the very first video that I put up about this topic, I was more so just explaining the basis for my story, why I made it, what led me to actually wanting to make it, my own personal creative process, and just explaining a bit more about the characters and the prologue arc, which I'll just leave a card title up here or somewhere like that, where you can watch that video first if you haven't seen it. Now, by the time Shocker is setting off on his journey to actually find Luffy and defeat him and become the king of the pirates, 5 years has passed between the time when Luffy's actually finished his journey and the time when Shocker starts his. That begs a lot of questions, right? How did Luffy become the Pirate King? What happened at the end of the original story? What happened within that 5-year gap? In today's video, I'm going to be explaining that and a whole lot more, as this video is going to be One Piece Grand Journey explaining the blank period. But as always, before we get started, guys, please like the video, subscribe to the page for more One Piece content like this, and share it around. We need to build up this community. Now, before I can get to actually explaining the things that went on during the blank period, I have to actually give context to what the blank period is. So the blank period, as I define it, is the span of the 5 years set between the end of the original story, which is Luffy becoming the Pirate King and all that, and the start of mine, which is the start of Shocker's journey. Remember that this is a parallel universe to Oda's story, so there's gonna be some things that are different, and those things are explained away by the fact that it is indeed a parallel kind of reality, which we know because of Oda's extended SBSs and all those other things, that parallel universes do exist. And on that, people always ask me, like, immediately out the gate, well, how am I gonna do a sequel story to a story that isn't even finished yet? And that's why it is a parallel universe, because it allows me to have the creative liberty to conclude things the way that I think and I would like for them to be, without having to worry about consistency issues between the main story and mine. Oh, and just so that we're all clear, I'm gonna try and, as much as possible, stay away from things that I haven't revealed already in the chapters of my story, which you can read over on Archive of Your Own, and I have plans to make it a manga. But regardless, because there are a lot of things that have more future implications, I'm gonna try and stay away from spoiling those for people who are following along. So the blank period. What exactly is it? What exactly happened? Well, for almost every major character or just character period that Oda has ever shown us in the original One Piece story, I have at least an idea of what I think they may be doing now, if not have a genuine fleshed out story for what happened. Oh, and by the way, as we continue, if you want to read up on the events that I'm going to talk about this video, this video is just an explanation of 2 chapters that I already put out, which are chapters 56 and 57, which comprise of kind of mini arc explaining exactly what this video is going to explain. So if you want a shorter read through, then you can just go to the chapters and check that out. But I'm going to still explain things here and go a bit more in depth about why I made those choices. So let's begin with the most important characters, the Straw Hats. So yes, Luffy did it. We all know he's gonna do it. He did it. He became the Pirate King. It was his goal, and he succeeded. His crew was by his side. And right off the gate, we have another change, or I guess parallel dimension change that I made, which is that after the events of Wano Country, both Yamato and Carrot did join the Straw Hat Pirates, and that was the final roster with 12 members. So his bounty now is 5,600,000,000, which is perfect, both because it puts him above Roger's bounty, which is 5.5 some, showing that obviously he surpassed even the first Pirate King Goldie Roger. But on top of that, it incorporates the 56, which is Luffy's special number because of Go and Mu and Japanese puns, basically. Now, he became the Pirate King after the pirate side of his story was over. That is, he and his crew fought the Blackbeard pirates on the shores of Laugh-Tale for the One Piece, and then they defeated the Blackbeard pirates, definitively won, and found the One Piece. But the story wasn't over from right then and there. Now, in the final phase of the original story, the Straw Hats teamed up with both the Revolutionary Army and just all of their friends from across their journey. All of them made one final effort to push back and fight against the world government, to take down the Celestial Dragon system and to take down the Marines, the world government, Imu, the Gorosei, and the God's Knights, with Luffy himself properly defeating Imu. The reason I did that is just because I personally subscribe to the theory that, I don't even think it's a theory at this point where we are in the story, just based off of how the story is going, it very clearly seems like Imu is set up to be like the final villain and not Blackbeard. So I feel like Blackbeard's defeat just has to come before. Now, following Luffy becoming the Pirate King, he decided to change up the era. So it was still, the world entered into a new pirate era. Instead of the Great Age of Pirates, it's kind of a new Age of Pirates, where Luffy shifted the goal, where he has the One Piece now. Like, the One Piece has been found by him, he has it. No one's confused about where the One Piece location is. So the goal has changed. The goal is no longer to find the One Piece to become the king of the pirates. The goal is now to gather a crew strong enough to challenge Luffy's forces and defeat him properly for whoever that next person is to become the third Pirate King. So he changed up that era, and I imagine that because Luffy's just, he's very competitive, but like kind of in a good-natured way, as long as there's still pirates who want to fight him and his crew will stay together in order to continue like fighting back. So that's kind of the era that Luffy made. And then I also made it so that not all the Straw Hats have actually completed their dreams before Luffy became the Pirate King, and that's because those dreams have like effect in my story, or like there's still some plot lines that I'm gonna address in my story revolving the Straw Hats' dreams. For example, Nami hasn't finished the map of the entire world because they're still adventuring. There's still many places to go to. And then probably the most controversial one, the fact that Zoro is still not yet the world's strongest swordsman. Now, there's a reason that I have made it so that Zoro is not yet the strongest swordsman as of now, at least for now, and that reason is going to be revealed in a chapter coming up fairly soon. But suffice to say, like, I wanted Mihawk to still be like the pinnacle of what people can really like achieve sword skills wise in this world, and that's gonna all come to a head fairly soon. So yeah, for the Straw Hats, they stay together, their adventure continues, they keep journeying through, discovering new islands together, but then they do have a base in the new world that kind of like acts as their HQ of sorts. Oh, and the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, they all got like some bounty increases along with the main crew's increase, and then now they're just kind of like emissaries, they preach the good word of Luffy and recruit more people to his cause, even though Luffy himself still continues to not want anything having to do with leading some kind of massive operation. He just lets people be under him. With Luffy being the Pirate King now, many people may be wondering, so what about the YONKO system? How does that work? Well, I have an answer for that too. It's pretty simple. The Emperor system in my story still does exist, but because Luffy is the Pirate King now, the 4 Emperors are just the 4 pirates who have the best chance at defeating Luffy and his crew, or the 4 pirates who are closest to Luffy. Now, the current roster of the 4 Emperors, which, by the way, not all 4 spots are filled, only 3 are filled as of right now, but those 3 spots are taken by characters that I've made myself. But before I talk about them, let's talk kind of about what happened to the 7 Emperors we knew from the original series. Now, first things first, out of the 7 that we know from the original series, only Luffy and Blackbeard are confirmed to still be like alive and active, at least as of between 5 years ago and right now. Now, obviously, Whitebeard was killed years upon years ago during the Pound Mount War. That hasn't changed. But because of how much I personally subscribe to this theory, it's one of my favorite theories, like ongoing One Piece theories for right now, Blackbeard kills red-haired Shanks. I just feel like they have such a strong connection to each other with like all of the ongoing feud, all the background stuff, that this is just the natural way for Shanks' story to conclude, and then he's entrusting the future to Luffy. And then you have the red-haired pirates. After Shanks' death, they became a lot like the Roger pirates in that they're just scattered throughout the world doing their own thing, but still kind of trying to keep the light of piracy alive in their own little ways. Now for some interesting points. What happened to Big Mom and Kaido after Wano? Well, in my version of events, after they were both defeated by the raid and then that whole explosion happened or whatever, right? They ended up washed up on like the beaches of Wano, on the shores. They were alive, but they were horribly injured, like to the point where it would take months, if not years, for them to even regain like fighting shape, let alone like actually start moving around and like doing stuff, you know. Now remember how the Big Mom pirate ship was said to be circling Wano? Well, in my version of events, Big Mom's crew came, just picked her up, and took her back to Totland. Hold off on that. We'll get back to Big Mom later. Let's focus on Kaido right now. So Kaido was just simply left there. None of his crew was able to help him because they were all captured in Udon's prisons and stuff like that. So Kaido was just left there until eventually the Marines were able to capture him and take him in. A new level of Impel Down called Level 7 was made solely for Kaido. He was the only person in Level 7. However, a few years later, relatively, a man by the name of Dragon Hunter Dravo would infiltrate into Impel Down. He busts in, kills Kaido, and then he escapes with King, Queen, and Jack, who are the only 3 members of Kaido's crew to actually get taken to Impel Down with him. So he escapes Impel Down with King, Queen, and Jack, and from as far as the world knows, King, Queen, and Jack are now working for Dravo's crew, the Creature Pirates. And because of this and the fact that he killed Kaido and busted out into Impel Down, the world government made Dravo one of the YONKO. Now Dravo's character hasn't been shown yet in my story, and I don't think will be for quite a while, but when he does eventually show up, he's gonna have some major connections to some major players, so y'all watch out for that. Now around that same time in Wano, Hawkins, Apu, Drake, and the rest of the Tobiropo, they all managed to escape from Udon's prisons, but they couldn't fight back against Wano's hierarchy at that point, so they decided to flee from Wano. And yeah, I know it was left kind of ambiguous, like towards the end of Wano in the original series, whether Drake and Hawkins are still alive, like what's going on with them. In my version, they're still alive, but there's a reason for it. So Sasaki and Who's Who, they go back to being pirate captains of their own crews. They go off into the world doing their own thing, and they're just removed for now. Drake manages to convince Ulti, Black Maria, and Page One to join his Drake pirates. Also, there is going to be something that I explain with Drake, which I won't explain until like probably another video, but suffice to say, an event occurs in which Drake realizes how corrupt the government is, and even though he's a member of SWORD, he ends up actually properly leaving the government, and his pirate crew he's just a pirate now. Now, back to Big Mom. All that while Kaido is being captured, brought to Impel Down, all that, in the meanwhile, Big Mom is brought back to her territory, only to find that the entire territory is in shambles while she was gone in Wano, because the Blackbeard pirates took that opportunity to attack the territory and kidnap Pudding, and on top of that, Caesar and the Germas 66 escaped. So because of this, she focuses a lot of time on both her own like nursing herself back to health, but also like nursing Totland in its entirety back to at least a fraction of its former glory, right? They have to rebuild, they have to, she just has to get her territory back to where it used to be. But that doesn't last long, because soon after, another female pirate named Otsu Radiance infiltrates the territory. It's not so much as infiltrate as much as she just barges in with her own crew, and she starts to contest Big Mom, saying that there isn't enough room on the seas for 2 powerful female pirates, and so they get to clashing. So a large battle takes place, and that pits the Big Mom pirates against Radiance's mother pirates, as her epithet is Mother, or the Mother. And to the world's shock, it is announced that Radiance managed to kill Big Mom. Just straight up, Big Mom is dead. So after this, Radiance takes over Totland and expands it. She renames it the Otherworld Empire, and that's like she's the queen of Otherworld. But then she does give chance for Big Mom's kids to escape. She says even though your mom is now dead, because I'm just that kind of person, I'll give you a chance to escape. If you don't, then I'll kill you. And so the Big Mom Pirates escape. Smoothie becomes the new captain of the crew because it should go to Katakuri, but Katakuri has no interest in doing that, and he, in fact, ends up leaving his family. He opts to journey alone in the world because he just wants to see the world for himself. So he leaves his family, which leaves Smoothie to be next in line. Smoothie becomes the captain of the crew and names it the Smoothie Pirates. And so through all of that, Radiance ends up taking the second position of Yonko, and yeah, her epithet is Mother. Now people are wondering, so what happened to Blackbeard? Well, the thing about Blackbeard is after Luffy defeated him on Laugh Tale, he lost a lot of his forces. So because of that, he was kind of demoted back to the class of a regular pirate. He didn't hold nearly as much influence as he used to as an Emperor of the Sea. So he was demoted, he lost a lot of his territories. He still has some, but he's more so now just roaming the New World, waiting to enter that spotlight again, because he's no longer an emperor. People are no longer talking about him like that. He still has some members of his core crew, but also important to note, as of right now, no one knows where Buggy is, but they do know that the Cross Guild is dissolved because Crocodile and Mihawk are now doing their own things separately, but no one knows where Buggy is. So now we know what happened to the emperors. I guess the next major problem that we have to face is, okay, what happened to the supernovas? See, with Luffy becoming the Pirate King, Law knew that he had to do something drastic if he wanted to further his own goal. And this is especially since, as Luffy's crew kept just getting wins, the Heart Pirates and the Kid Pirates he heard were decimated by other emperors, and in general, the supernovas just became less of the talking point in the New World as the emperors became more of the focus. So what Law decided to do was to convene a large meeting of all the supernova, and the only ones who didn't show up were Luffy and Zoro, obviously because they were already doing their own thing with the whole Pirate King and first mate of the Pirate King and all that, and Urouge, because Urouge by this point decided that he's just going to retire to the East Blue. So Law brought them all together on a certain island, and they had these long arguments, long talks, but at the end of it, they all agreed on what they needed to do. They decided that the Heart Pirates, Kid Pirates, Bonnie Pirates, On Air Pirates, Hawkins Pirates, Drake Pirates, and the Fire Tank Pirates would merge all into one super crew. So they did this in order to make the world government take them seriously, right? All these big names. And it worked. The world government saw all of these influential, dangerous pirates coming together under one banner and thought that a force like this hasn't been seen since the time of the Rocks Pirates. And so they needed to label them as an Empress-like crew. And so they did. They made that crew, the Supernova Pirates, an Emperor crew, and Trafalgar Law is named one of the Emperors. So Law became a Yonko, and the rest of the Supernova became commanders of his, but he still allows them to just like do their own thing with their own crew, and each Supernova kind of like still has their crew mates, their crew within the larger crew. It's just kind of more like division commanders now. And then for Law himself, like the whole plan of becoming a Yonko was just so that the Marines would get off his back and he'd be able to further his own goal and research easier. So yeah, that's what happened with the Emperors. And as far as we know, there's like only 3 of the 4 spots filled. The 4th spot won't be filled until like way later on, but that's not important for right now. So that's the Yonko done, but what about the 7 warlords? Well, for the most part, ever since the group's dissolution, they're just considered regular pirates. They're still strong, but you know, they're not above the law. They can't get away with things like they could when they were warlords. So at that time, Crocodile was just still traveling the world with Mr. One. After Cross Guild having failed, he and Mr. One just traveled around and kind of did their own thing for a while. Interestingly enough, Crocodile is actually the main antagonist of the most recently completed arc, the Yasenishi arc in my story. So in that arc, he was planning on starting a new organization called La Renaissance, which the name is just so perfect. I'm so happy that I was able to come up with that name. It's so amazing. But in that organization, he was more so focusing on quality rather than quantity in terms of the, criminals and thugs and pirate hunters that joined up with him. In a nutshell, his plan was to just take over the world by having multiple kingdoms and countries backing him financially and backing his organization, such to the point where he has enough backing to contest the world government. But that plan was foiled by Shocker. Shocker and his crew had their own reasons for being on the island, but eventually he was foiled, and right now he is on his way to Impel Down. Now, in my version of events, Moria is revealed to be a member of Blackbeard's crew. We saw Moria going to Hachinosu to look for Absalom, and we never kind of knew what was going on with him. And then we kind of knew that he wasn't dead, but he was captured because Perona wanted Kobe's help to help him escape. So basically, in my version, scrap all that, because Moria is a member of Blackbeard's crew. He's not a Titanic captain or nothing, but he's still a pretty strong member. So then when the Blackbeard pirates are eventually defeated and forced to retreat and move away and all that, he found himself just fleeing along with the Emperor. Now, as of the making of this video, we are still in the Egghead arc in the original series, which means I'm not sure entirely how Kuma's story is going to be written there. But in terms of my version, what happened is that when the revolutionaries attacked the Holy Land to rescue Kuma, during that rescue, they were also able to restore his personality. So now Kuma is safely back with the Revolutionary Army. He's a member of the army, and that's all that. Doflamingo and his crew are still in Impel Down. Nothing has changed there. They're all still there. After the Cross Guild dissolved, Mihawk just decided to kind of wander around for a bit, looking for some more strong swordsmen to fight. And then he would periodically go, sometimes back home to the Monkey Kingdom, sometimes somewhere else. But in all, he's just waiting for Zoro to challenge him. And Perona is, at times, with him. And kind of similarly, you have Boa. She continues to be the Empress of Amazon Lily, the captain of the Kuja Pirates, and she just continues to operate on her own island on Amazon Lily. The only difference really is that after Luffy became the Pirate King, she just started telling people that she's the Pirate King's wife. So besides Buggy, who was said to have disappeared as the Cross Guild was falling apart, the only other warlord that nobody knows what happened to him is Edward Weevil, because Weevil and his mom, Miss Buchan, both of them just disappeared and no one knows where they are right now. So my plan with the warlords is that I split them up. They're still doing their own thing, so that even though this is kind of a new generation in this new story, it's kind of a new generation, they're still they still have relevance and are going to be brought back in the plot in different ways. So that was the warlords. Now what about the Marines and the world government? Because there was definitely some major changes that happened just due to the fact that there was the Throne War, and at the end of the Throne War is what I just call the final war of the series. First things first, Sakazuki was kicked out of the Marines for two reasons. The main one being his inability to stop Luffy from becoming a pirate king and stop the advent of a new pirate era. But even though he was fired from the Marines, he ended up joining up with the world government just because his hatred and for pirates and his want for them to be eradicated was so strong that he just decided to join up with a different organization so that he could continue doing the same thing. So right now, Sakazuki is with the world government. Meanwhile, Borsalino is just way too old. Kizaru is just way too old. So he kind of retires from the front lines and he's given a special job in the Marines known as the mission officer, the person who assigns people different missions, kind of like what the Hokage would do in the Naruto franchise. So this allows him to, stay inside and smoke if, I don't know, a lot of people seem to think that all Kizaru does is smoke all day. So, hey, now that he's inside all day, he can do that. Now with the fleet admiral position open since Sakazuki's gone, it's actually Fujitora or Isho who ends up taking it, and that's via Sengoku's recommendation. So now you have Fleet Admiral Isho. Then during the Throne War, Ryokyugyu, of all people, has some sort of epiphany about the world government, right? Because there's a certain moment when the Celestial Dragons order the God's Knights, or one of the God's Knights, to take him out because of just how useless he's being in their eyes. And as Ryokyugyu is about to die, it's actually Aokiji who ends up saving him. And then after a brief talk about their ideals and stuff like that, it actually puts into Ryokugu's mind how little the world government cares about him, and makes him come to the realization that he doesn't actually like the system, and so he ends up quitting. So he quits and he disappears. No one knows where Ryokugu is right now. So now all 3 admiral positions are empty, so I had to fill them. So first things first is that I made both Smoker and Kobe admirals, and I did this really because I feel like both of their goals, like they're the kind of like 2 marine rivals to Luffy, where it's like both of them attaining the admiral position is just the natural trajectory for their characters. So I just decided, why not make them like that? On top of that, it also gives me an excuse to give them power boosts that they very desperately need. So their titles are Shirokami and Momozumi, which mean White Wolf and Pink Rat respectively. Then I made the 3rd admiral. This is like a character I made myself. So her name is Lana, or Mitori. Mitori is her admiral code name, and it means green bird. She's special for 2 reasons. A, she's the first woman to be in the admiral position in the Marines, and B, she's the first admiral to have a Zoan power, because she actually has the power to turn into a hawk. Kobe is also the first admiral, as far as we know, to not have a devil fruit, and that's because I wanted to keep Kobe's strength like with just himself, just like Garp is, where it's just his own physicality, his own strength, his own haki, and he doesn't have a devil fruit to supplement it, but he doesn't need one. But then this is probably the single most impactful change. Remember when I said that there were 2 reasons why Akainu was kicked out, and one was because he wasn't able to stop Luffy from becoming the Pirate King? Well, this is the other. He killed Garp, and I already know people are going to be looking at me mad crazy in the comments, but let me explain. During the Throne War, there was a moment when Luffy was just continuously fighting a horde of enemies, and he wasn't looking around him, right? It left him open, which left him open from an attack from Akainu, who was coming in his blind spot. So Akainu was ready to strike, but Garp jumped in the way, sacrificing himself for his grandson. And the reason Garp did that is because he saw what happened with Ace, and he knew that pain once, and he just knew that he couldn't allow that to happen again. So this time he jumped in the way, sacrificed himself for his grandson, who he believed would take the world to a better future, even more so than the Marines can. So Luffy, seeing this right in front of his face, obviously is like, this can't be real. Not the same man killing my family twice. But then Sabo steps in, calms Luffy down, and says, don't worry, let me handle it. And I did that so that the very popular theory of Sabo fighting Akainu for the will of Ace plays out. So yeah, Garp is dead. Tsuru and Sengoku, his 2 closest friends in the Marines, they take his body and bury it in Fusha village, and then both of them quit the Marines too. So Sengoku is no longer a Marine, and neither is Tsuru. So that was the changes in the Marines, but the Revolutionary Army's been putting in some work too. Essentially, Dragon's Revolution was a success. So him and the Revolutionary Army, they teamed up with the Straw Hats and a bunch of other allies from around the world, like I said earlier, and they launched a frontal assault on Marijoa. So when they were there, they were fighting the Cypher Pole, they were fighting the God's Knights, they were fighting the Gorosei, and it was just a huge battle. However, in the end, they finally managed to defeat Imu, and Dragon actually assassinated him, and that actually freed the world from Imu's tyranny, the oppression that they've been feeling, and they brought about the dawn of the world that everyone knew Luffy is supposed to bring. Now, in accordance with Dragon's plan, because I can't stress this enough, people don't understand this, Dragon is not trying to topple the entire world government. He just wants to remove the Celestial Dragon system, because that's where the problem is. But he has no problem with regular democratic governments. So in accordance with that plan, the world government was reinstated with a new system where they have the Council of Elders, which are just a bunch of like older people from all around the world and all kind of government affiliated countries coming together and deciding what's best for the government. And then they appointed this man right here, and the character I made. His name is Ransei, and Ransei is the world government chairman. Now, a lot of the Straw Hats' former enemies have moved on as well, and they're just doing their own things in the world. Kuro, Krieg, and Arlong are all still in jail, Bellamy retired from piracy and has started his own flag making company, so that's what he's doing now. And similarly, the ex-members of Baroque Works are just continuing to run the Spider Cafe. Caesar Clown is still lurking somewhere in the New World after he and the Germa escaped. He separated from the Germa, so he's just now doing his own thing. However, there are two enemies that something significant actually did happen with them: Enno and Lucci. With Enno, well, he crash landed onto the Blue Sea after he was kicked out of being the leader of the Moon's Automata army, because the Automata realized that Enno didn't care about them, he was only trying to use them, and so they actually kicked him out. He crash landed on the Blue Sea, the one sea that he's never been to before. At around the same time, Rob Lucci was kicked out of the world government and then chased by the world government because of him just consistently not following orders. And so they were chasing him and trying to put him in jail. So the two happened to have a chance encounter with each other. They met awkwardly and became sort of friends, but not really friends, as opposed to more like rivals. So they formed a contentious alliance with each other just to kind of survive in the New World for some time. But then they were invited in to join the Mother Pirates, who, as we remember, are the crew of an emperor. So yeah, Lucci and Enno are both pirates now and are both members of an emperor's crew. But just as the enemies have grown, so too have their allies. In Shimotsuki Village, a large golden statue of Zoro is put up, and the Isshin Dojo teaches his three-sword style. In Kokoyashi, Nojiko is now the mayor after Genzo retired. Similarly, Kaya became the mayor of Syrup Village, and because I really like what the live action did, I made it kind of the same, where Kaya and Usopp do have a thing for each other, and Kaya's not afraid to say it, so she just waits for Usopp to return, and Usopp just returns periodically to check up on her before leaving again. Zeph and the Baratier have relocated to the entrance of the Grand Line so that they can have more people, eating their food. Dalton is still the king of the Sakura Kingdom, and Dr. Kureha loves to watch Chopper's progress. Jaguar D Sol is alive and well, and he's now the librarian on Elbaf, the home of the giants. In Water 7, Iceberg and the Galila Company are making blimp technology so as to make space travel more accessible to everybody. After Brook reunites with Laboon, Laboon becomes the Straw Hat's pet and follows them around the New World, both as their pet but also as a mobile fortress. Then many of the friends that the Straw Hats made along their way have eventually succeeded their fathers/mothers, whoever was the ruler of their country before. They eventually succeeded them to become the rulers of their countries now. So we see this with Vivi, who became the queen of Alabasta, Leo, who became the leader of the Tantaras, Fukaboshi, who became the king of the Ryugu kingdom, and Rebecca, who became the queen of Dressrosa. Meanwhile, up on Skypiea, we have Wiper and Konis marrying, and that's both because they just ended up loving each other, coincidentally, but the Skypians and Shandians actually saw this as a way of uniting their two tribes that used to quarrel all the time to bring together the sky races. So it was really beautiful in that way. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I got for y'all. Now, it is a lot of changes, and I know people are kind of contentious to changes from the main story because the One Piece story is something that we all love, and I love it too. But the reason that I made all these changes, and I feel like every time I made a change, is because I knew that it was something that not only that I personally wanted to see happen, but something that is gonna most likely connect to other facets of the world that I'm creating to flesh out my own world building skills. Now, I plan for me to be writing the story, all the projects, everything regarding One Piece Grand Journey. I plan for it to keep going on for years and years, even years after the actual One Piece manga finishes. So there's still going to be a lot more One Piece Grand Journey content, and I'm making this video as a basis for anyone who's trying to remember what happened to all the major players. So that's the end of the video, y'all. Now, please, I need y'all to like the video, subscribe to the page for more One Piece content just like this, and share it around. I want this truly to be a community, but I need y'all help to do it. So that's it. I'll see y'all in the next one, and always remember, One Piece, one life.